It's kind of weird to think that in a large community of people whose hobby revolves around translation, that translation is nonetheless wildly misunderstood by a large number of those people, like to the point where statements like, "I support translators and not localizers" have become, well, a thing in general. Oh my god, and yet here we are.
Japanese media can be consumed by anyone, and how you choose to consume it comes with pros and cons of varying nature. When you watch an anime with subtitles, usually fan subs, it's generally the best way to watch it, as there isn't a big company to oversee and also underpay their staff to do so. However, this may mean some time will have to pass, like maybe a day or so, to get the translations finished, versus something like Crunchyroll, where it's available within the next hour.
When asked about what he thinks is the biggest misconception surrounding translation, localization, and censorship, professional translator John Hooper told me that the whole process is just a simple conversion of language A to language B. There's far more involved than just that.
Well, that's because they're two different things, localization and translation. You'll bring up definitions at some point, contradict them, and then spout off about them once more, but let's go ahead and establish this right from the start. Translation, which is rendering speech or text from one language to another, is different than localization, which is the process of taking the translation and rendering it to adapt the target language's form and nuance.
And as though they were reading each other's minds, which is to say that, and because this problem is in fact that prominent, several other translators told me pretty much the same thing, that there's a lot of people who just don't understand that translation isn't some simple machine process.
Machine translation, not exclusive to Japanese, is not accurate. Whenever inputting something from one language to another, some things are lost in translation. No pun intended. Nuances and the like get filtered by machines, and sometimes even people.
In the words of an anonymous ADR director that I spoke to, language isn't Legos, and there isn't a one-to-one fit. And that's where this video comes in.
There is no language on the face of the earth that will ever be one-to-one, even in the case of US English and the UK English, where fries are chips.
I want to help you understand what translation, localization, and censorship actually are, and perhaps more importantly, what they aren't. Let me and some industry professionals tell you all about it.
That's who you made this video for, your industry constituents, so you can be invited to the after party. Sorry, I know it's mean and conjecture, but let's really ask ourselves why we need to defend this. You'll see what I mean. Let's understand something a little bit off script right now. Translation, localization, and censorship, they don't have anything to do with you. These are all industry problems. And if the industry can't figure it out, then it's not you, the consumer, that has to suffer. It's them. They need to figure out something, not you.
For this video's research, alongside reading and watching lots of material about this subject, I reached out to several professionals in the Japanese to English translation industry. Not all of them wanted to be named, but rest assured the names and/or tags of those who didn't want to be kept anonymous are in the description, and I encourage you to thank them all not only for helping me out with this video, but also for doing the work that they do, because, as you're about to find out, translation can often be an underappreciated and sometimes even thankless job.
Well, tell that to Crunchyroll. Most people are pretty okay with localizers and translators when they're not messing things up.
Anyways, I asked everyone a bunch of questions about their experiences in the translation industry, about their views on translation and the discourse around it, all sorts of stuff like that.
There wouldn't be a discourse if you understood why so many people are upset about these companies rewriting things and replacing them maliciously, for lack of a better word.
And it's thanks to their insights that I think I've been able to write what I'm hoping will be a good video to show to people who don't quite understand what translation is. Which, is a dressed up way of saying, oh my god, I'm begging you, watch this video, and ideally the ones on the end card too, before you make a complaint about translation again. Oh my god, I am so tired of this discourse happening every other week!
Again, this wouldn't be a discourse if they knew how to do their job. And like you said, we're going to be arguing in bad faith through pretty much most of this, because you're the only ones that are right. The industry people.
So with all that being said, let's go ahead and begin at the beginning, or more specifically, let's begin at where the heart of where most of the misunderstandings surrounding translation are.
You didn't define the word localization here. You took what random person said. It's right there where it says, for me. Localization is being bastardized in front of our eyes, and this quote is a testament to that.
I don't think there is a single word that strikes fear in the hearts of Japanese media fans quite as effectively as localization. What a fun and often completely misunderstood word that is.
No, it's not misunderstood. Also, your image is literally countered by examples of abused translations to make the word localization be viewed the way it is. Let's think for a moment about this image. What does it say to you about what weebs think and about what it really is? Well, it's because the top part is, while exaggerated, exactly what happens to Japanese media when localized for American or other places' audiences. It can be misunderstood if people see the negative effects of something in front of them, especially with more cases popping up to make people think this. But I'll get to that in a bit.
So, what is it and why does it matter? And more importantly, what's its relationship to translation? The dictionary definition of localization is simply the process of making something local in character or restricting it to a particular place. And while that may sound like it's just a fancy way of saying that it means to anglicize something, in practice, it's actually a lot more broad than that.
What do you mean more broad? It's very specific in its definition of what it is. If it were more broad, it would say something like to correct something or to change discriminately.
If translation is trying to convert words from one language to another, then localization is converting the sentiment and ideas behind the words.
Well, yeah, it's supposed to be that way. Nothing more, nothing less. When you veer off that path, you will get people up in arms quick.
It's a key step in any translation process, and not something restricted to, say, Funimation and Crunchyroll. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and say that one more time just because there's an alarming number of people who seem to think that localization is just something done to censor anime.
If it's not done to censor, then why did key scenes in Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind get taken out? Nearly 24 minutes of the film were cut from the international release, which left out very important world-building scenes. The VHS cassettes were the only affected media. All DVDs released worldwide, however, contained the original uncut Japanese version. Not only were the names changed in the movie from Nausicaa to Princess Zandra, but the posters and title are also completely different as well.